Uh, we can kind of get it out to players that aren't able to attend at the time. Let me know, Hayden. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Sorry. So we're just going to spend the next hour just kind of talk about all things college soccer, specifically Division One college soccer with Coach Hayden, who is currently the assistant coach at Eastern Washington University. So kind of something that I said when I was putting together the next webinar was trying to put someone who probably isn't, used to the Memphis area, used to the southeast area, someone that's kind of a part of a different part of the country, and just see if there's some similarities and common denominators between, what's happening out in Washington and then also what's happening here in the Mid South. Purpose of the call, we're going to go over recruiting timelines, what Eastern Washington slash a Division One program look for in a recruit, what is important during the recruitment process, understand just the weekly schedule of an NCAA Division One athlete, understand the schedule and vast representation on a Division One roster, and then just understand a little bit more of the program. Just want to say this in the front end. This is not a Q&A. I will lead the discussion with coach, and then at the end, we'll answer any questions you have. So just to kind of get started, something that we put on the boys' call last week was, the reason why we're doing this is on average 55% of our players advance to play college soccer each year. So it's just kind of connecting the dots between, what the club does on the youth side and then kind of connecting it later now to the college side. So that's kind of what the purpose of the call of tonight is. Fast forward, this is Coach Hayden. I think for reference, he's currently at Eastern Washington, but that's not been his only stop. He was also an assistant coach at Oklahoma State, assistant coach at University of Kentucky, and then assistant coach at the Citadel, which is in South Carolina. So he brings vast experience from really four different parts of the country, and can really give us a good insight into the college recruitment process. So basically, coach, we'll just dive right into it in regards to the questions. We'll just kind of go back and forth. But, what are some specific things that you look for in a player at the Division One level?
I think, the biggest things straight away are, and again, it becomes almost cliche, but certainly the character traits over the almost the player traits a lot of the time. I think you want, again, obviously you've seen that photo there. There's 27 players on the team for us, so we want to make sure that we're bringing in good people that are going to be willing to work and I think commit themselves to what we're trying to do, which is ultimately win games and progress as a team. But for them to get to the next step, and whether that's career, jobs after graduating, or playing after that, but I think making sure that we've got a group of people that want to be there, that get on with each other as much as they can, and then but are ultimately just good people. So turn up on time, work hard, treat each other with respect, those kind of things that for us when we're out recruiting, we can see that straight away in how they interact with referees, how they interact with teammates, how they interact with parents, with coaches and stuff like that. And usually when things are going bad, what are their reactions? And then also how do they lift each other up and stuff when they celebrate goals? Are they celebrating? Are they celebrating teammates and stuff like that? So I think first and foremost, or ultimately the people part of that is the most important.
Love it. In regards to like just touching on like technical, in regards to
Yeah.
what are some kind of things you look at technically, physically that you think can kind of translate from youth to the Division One level?
I think for me anyway, the players that can play with pressure on every angle, so they can receive the ball with pressure on their back, especially, and are able to take the ball and get out of that. Players that are constantly wanting to play forwards, wanting to not necessarily take risks, but are willing to go and progress the ball, especially for how we want our team to play. We need to make sure that they have the understanding of how to do that, but also the technical ability to do that. So want to play forward, want to be aggressive when they've got the ball, want to go make things happen. And even if that's a centre back that receives the ball, the keeper wants to go and play forward, wants to go and and try and probe and drive into midfield rather than just passing it to the fullback or something like that. So across every position, we kind of look at those things with, can you take the ball under pressure? Can you get out of pressure? And can you play forward? I think that's probably, again, quite a basic one, but an important one.
Yeah. What are some non-negotiables to play with your program academically and athletically? What are some things that, especially in the classroom, what are some non-negotiables?
Um, I mean, for us, for our freshmen, they're in study hall straight away, so they go into 4 hours of study hall. In their first, so for us it's quarters, so we're on the quarter system. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But for when they come into the fall, they automatically go into 4 hours of study hall. They need a 3.0 to get out of that. So for us, basically 3.0 is the standard. I don't think right now that we have anyone that is currently basically outside of their freshman quarter or fall quarter that is still in study hall, if that makes sense. So everyone is above a 3.0. Again, at every other place I've been to, that's not really been an issue. I think maybe sometimes they drop below a 3, but they're straight back up. So I think academically that's an important piece. And again, I think it goes to show usually it's just you're taking care of your stuff, you're attending class, you're getting your assignments submitted and on time and things like that. You're communicating with professors if you need to. You're going to academic support if you need to. But usually, again, for us, we can kind of identify those things. Not only are you good in school, but again, the kind of character traits that we're looking for usually tie into that as well. So, academically, we're looking at a 3.0. If not, you're in study hall, which is just more support. It's certainly not a punishment, but just finding different ways to support you through that. Athletically, we do. I suppose the non-negotiables will start with fitness. We do the yo-yo in pre-season and then a few times through the spring. But that is kind of, I suppose, the baseline as we come in. Again, it's certainly not a punishment, but certainly we think that you need X score basically to perform at the level that we need you to play at safely and most impactfully, I think. So that's an important part. Again, just on the surface of what we expect. So we expect the players to be working through the summer to come in fit, ready to go on day one, that we don't have to spend time working on fitness. It's just straight in the soccer stuff, which is what we all enjoy, hopefully.
Do you have like a summer packet that you give your players that helps to prepare, reach the score that you need fitness wise?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the quarter thing helps us in a little bit. So for us, our quarter dates are basically our classes in the fall don't start until I think this year was the 27th of September. So we go from there until like last week or whatever it was. So we start really late compared to semester schools. And then in the spring, it's basically early January to like, I think it's early March is the winter quarter. And then our spring quarter is kind of mid-March to almost the start of June. So for us, we have the players on campus for or quite a lot into the summer. Whereas again, compared to a semester school where they're done first weekend of May, we've still got them on campus. So they're working a lot with our strength and conditioning coach. And then we have a soccer packet that we send out as well. But a lot of that work is done with us and then certainly within the packet that strength and conditioning will send out as well.
Love it. And then just fast forwarding on recruiting timelines, are you recruiting 25s? Are you recruiting 26s? Are you, starting to identify some 2027s? Like where are you currently in your recruiting timeline?
Yeah, I think um we're certainly, I mean, transfer portal obviously plays a tiny part in that in terms of like immediate needs going into the spring, especially, and then into the fall. Roster cap again, probably a different conversation, but that is going to start to play its role and what we can do. Nobody still really technically knows what that's going to look like. Some are being told 28 for fall 25. We are kind of operating on 28 for fall 2026 will be our roster cap. So we are pretty much done with 2025. I think we signed 7 or 8. Should probably know that answer, but I think we signed 7 or 8 in the signing period just gone, and then we've got a couple of transfers coming in too. So 25 are pretty much done. especially from kind of high school ages, and then yeah, 26s we've got a couple signed so far, but that's kind of over the next 5 or 6 months. That's really our focus, and then starting to identify 27s, like you said, to kind of ahead of June 15th. So we're kind of at least stay up to speed, I think, with everyone else because that's kind of where it's at. So we need to make sure that we're still identifying those players, but certainly trying to finish out if not 25, but certainly 26, and then starting to look at 27. So yeah, sophomore, spring basically is a big time for us
Yeah.
for that upcoming junior class.
Yeah. And then in regards to like important during the recruitment process, highlight tapes, email, ID camps, like you've been at a lot of programs. How would you give advice to navigate, these processes?
I think email obviously as a starting point is important. The email is difficult as well because again, depending on when you send it, I think quieter times are sometimes good, even though you might not have that much coming up. Ahead of showcases and stuff, obviously important because you want to get on the schedule of the coaches and stuff. But we can get again here not as much, but like again, an OSU or a Kentucky, they're receiving like 4, 5, 600 emails leading up to events, so it's difficult. But you have to do it to get your name on the board. So email is certainly important. I think making sure to when you're writing it have something that makes you stand out. Again, we've seen everyone that's a 2026 that's a tough defender that's got this, and this accolade that is just interested in Eastern Washington like everyone else. And again, it's certainly good, and we want that, and obviously encourage that. But can you tell us something again about our season, maybe about that loss to this person or this win versus this team was excellent, like something that shows you've done a little bit more, that shows that you are genuinely interested in us. Because same thing, I think when certain schools send out like generic emails. It's like, all right, well, you've sent this to a million people, and that can be the same thing too for players in the recruitment process. So I think it's important that you certainly, I think sending those generic emails out is good because again, you might want to email 300 schools, and maybe that's what you're going to go for. But I think being able to narrow that down and then really spend some time to research the schools that you are really, really interested in. And again, finding different. Again, for us, we had the offensive player of the year for the conference and stuff. So maybe it's something like that. Like I play like her, or we would play really well together because I can do whatever. I also score goals, or I've got this many assists this year. I saw that Chloe has this many goals, like something like that. That again is going to catch our eye, rather than again just being like, here's the generic kind of thing as well. So email being really important. Within that, highlights is important. I heard somewhere like highlight tapes like the trailer to a movie kind of thing. So you need to make sure that the highlights are good enough that they want to come and see more. I think that's a really good way of putting it. For us, we would full game is really good against good opposition, not teams that you're beating 10-0 and stuff like that. Obviously, you see certain things in that as well, but I think seeing you up against the best possible players is really important. But ultimately, getting out to see you in person is the most important part. Because again, for us, it goes back to those character pieces that you're not going to see in a highlight tape. Everyone looks good in a highlight tape. That's the whole point. So for us, being able to see you play in person, and again get to see you interact with different people, get to see you make mistakes, get to see you respond to those, get to see those different things that you don't necessarily see, certainly on a highlight tape, but even on film.
Hmm. And then kind of ID camps, like obviously, Kentucky and Oklahoma State are juggernauts in regards to ID camps. I imagine Eastern Washington has an ID camp presence up there. How valuable are ID camps, maybe to players that aren't, 27s, 28s right now? How valuable is it for them to get to ID camps? And then realistically, how many players do colleges pick up at ID camps? Or do you think a lot of recruiting's done on the showcase and on the club circuits?
I think ID camps is a difficult one. Again, I think I've been fortunate that I've not been at a school that hosts ID camps has 400 players at it, which is just at that point it's not an ID camp, it's just a moneymaker, because the 3 or 4 coaches on staff can't watch all of you. So I think ID camps are really important in so many ways. Like for us, we kind of, I think our most is we're maybe at like 40 for a camp. And again, it gives us the opportunity, one, for you to work with us, and us to work with you, to see campus, to get around our players. We always have our players around that. So again, you get to interact with them a little bit. I think it's really important that again you're out of your comfort zone where you're playing with different people. You're having to do, again, go back to the character piece of like little pieces to put yourself out there that aren't, you're not at your normal club where you're training however many times a week and you see them all the time. You have to go and do something a little bit different. So I think that's important. Again, we're not going to judge you fully off of that because we know that you're in an uncomfortable kind of situation compared to what you are at club. But yeah, I think ID camps, they offer so much in for you. Again, can you see yourself at that school? So from the player's perspective, I think it's really important. From ours, again, we get to work with you. We get to be really specific, whether that's in training or games, what we want. I think, again, we certainly, it's usually not a first time like ID, like someone's just signed up for camp and we don't know who they are and they're now on the team next year kind of thing. But I think it certainly helps for decisions if we're at a certain point in the process and we're like, we'd love to come for you to come to camp and play against other players that we're also considering, for 26, for 27, whatever that might be. I think that gives us a really good opportunity to compare, and again get to the point of making our own decision where we're like, we need to see you do this. We'll just make you do that in the session or whatever. So again, I think they're really important. I think being selective in which ones you want to go to. Again, has the school shown any interest? Again, like not anything against Texas A&M, but I know they have camps that have like hundreds and hundreds of players at them. Can you find ones that you're actually going to be seen at by the staff, that gives you the best opportunity to get to where you want to be? Again, sometimes other schools though will have multiple, like OSU, we would have 8 to 10 colleges come in and work the ID camp as well. So maybe you're not the fit for Oklahoma State, but there's a smaller Division 1 or there's a D2 or there's whoever else. So you're getting seen by multiple people too. So your money's going probably a little bit further than it would be if you're just there for that one school as well. So that's another option.
Yeah. Okay. Skipping forward, we done this with the boys side, and I think, for reference, we done Lipscomb University, NCAA Division 1 out in Nashville, and they had, I can't remember what the exact country and state count was, but the country count was high, the state count was high. Your roster's a little bit different. One country represented, that's America, 7 states represented. Your roster breakdown was you had 28 players, 10 freshmen, 4 sophomores, 6 juniors, 6 seniors, and 2 graduate students. Just kind of talk about the roster this year and just give us context. How many of these true freshmen played, how many of these players have started and ended at Eastern Washington. How flexible is, a NCAA Division 1 college roster?
I think it's going to kind of revert back to what it was, I guess, pre-COVID going into this year. I think with no more, well, very little. I think last fall was the last year of that COVID year, so it'll go back to mostly 4-year players, which will be, again, good for club players or high school age players looking to move up. We at Eastern started. It would be, our back four was a freshman and 3 juniors, a 5th-year senior at the 6, a sophomore as the 10, and then I think 2 seniors and 2 juniors was the rest of the team. So it was an older team for us this year, again, with that 1 freshman and the 1 sophomore. Everyone else was an upperclassman. So I think that's probably where we are in terms of the head coach's cycle and recruiting as well. She's been here for I think that was her fourth season. So again, it's been players that she has recruited that have started as freshmen and have now worked their way up. So that junior class for us now being really important. Um, the two graduate students that are there, they were transfers as well. So players that we've brought into the program to come in and play. And then again, now we've got a solid group of juniors that took up the bulk of the minutes. And then again, a freshman that started, and then certainly I think three or four that were getting good minutes off the bench. One that was kind of in and out of the starting team as well. I think though, in general, and again, it's the kind of cliche that we've probably grew up with as well. But like, if you're good enough, you're old enough. We certainly want freshmen to be coming in and impacting the team. If we're doing that, we're probably doing our job, because our job is to replace everyone every year. Like, if we could get 10 players that are better than our current team to come in and play, they would play, because we need to win games. Again, that was probably going to be a mix. That's never going to happen. They're going to have 10 players come in and start. But um, I think it's important that you're ambitious in that as well, that you want players to be coming in and impacting the team. Again, that's probably maybe my personal opinion. Other schools, maybe they do redshirt freshmen more often than not. Maybe they do have. I think, thinking of OSU, we had a year where we had like three or four freshmen come in and start, and starting in the Big 12 and stuff again. So again, against teams that have got 23-year-old fifth-year seniors, sometimes sixth-year seniors at that point, playing against our little freshmen at that time. But again, if you're good enough, you're going to go and impact that. I think the biggest thing with that is obviously you can see that online everywhere. Nobody can hide that, in terms of, if we say, yeah, we play freshmen, and then you go on our website and you look at our freshmen and they've not played any minutes, then you can see that. So again, if you're looking at a potential school, I think it's important that you ask those questions, but certainly follow up and do your own digging in terms of, all right, let's look at the minute breakdown between the players, like who is getting the minutes. Again, maybe it's three, say it's a back four, and I play as a centre back, and they've got two rising juniors that are started and played every minute. That's going to be tough maybe to get in there as a freshman and play. So again, trying to figure that out in terms of pathway for yourself as well. Like, if it's two seniors that played last year, you've probably got a good chance of going in there and contributing straight away. So little pieces like that where I think it's important, again, that the younger players are playing, but you can do that research yourself as well.
I guess just a follow up. I don't want to compare player to player, but you just said one freshman played on your back line. That would then mean that nine freshmen ultimately didn't play as many minutes as what they wanted. A lot of people on this call and watching this call back will be younger. What can someone who is, a high school senior who's preparing for that first year of college, what can they do to bridge the gap? Because there's obviously a gap from
Yeah,
high school game to the college game. What advice would you give to players trying to bridge that gap to play at the Division 1 level?
I think number one is being fit and ready to go, so that there's no like excuses, or there's no reason for you not to be in there day one, being able to compete at that level. I think that's the easiest thing. But I think playing in the summer is important. Try and probably after junior summer, if you can, try and get in and around college age players or college players that are maybe a little bit quicker, a little bit bigger at that point, stronger, quicker on the ball, better on the ball. Like, trying to expose yourself to that, even though you might struggle a tiny bit. I think it's really important that you're putting yourself in amongst that as early as you can. Again, whether that's summer teams, whether that's maybe pick up with boys, maybe that's something like that again is going to expose you to something maybe a little bit quicker than you're used to. Because again, once you get to especially Division 1 level, like, again, looking at some of those states, and even though we don't represent a ton of states, still 7 states where we've been able to go and handpick players to come in and play. So we're being very selective, and it certainly is that next step. And then again, obviously, you go and times that by, again, like Kentucky, when I was there, we had Danish national team players, we had Icelandic players that had played in the national team since they were like 14 and things like that, and then also Kentucky and the rest of the country. So players that were exposed maybe to women's soccer early on that again you're able just to speed up that development again in terms of the speed of play. I think is important. But how you think of the game, that probably another one as well, another easy one. Watch as much as you can. Try and again, we've been talking a lot about that just now in terms of our spring season, like IDP kind of thing. So like again for a centre back, like this freshman centre back that's played loads, like can she watch Naomi Girma or someone that's like a role model at that highest level and see the things that she does and try and implement some of those things into her game so that again she's the best in the world. Can you try and pull a few things that you're like, that's amazing. I'd love to be like that. And I think that's probably another simple enough one that's accessible to anyone as well as watch as much as you can, try and learn as much as you can, and then yeah, the fitness piece as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like kind of moving on, non-conference, conference, in fact, to go back to that, just something else that I've just thought about. In regards
Mm-hmm.
to obviously 7 states represented on the boys, there was a lot of countries, a lot of states. Just for our players, how like even at an Eastern Washington, when you're at an Oklahoma State, when you're at Kentucky, how competitive is it nationwide, global? How competitive is it to play NCAA Division One soccer?
I mean, yeah, massively. Again, it depends on the school, and again, the Oklahoma State roster, for example, was there's a lot of talented players in like the Dallas area and in Texas. So like that was where a bulk of the team came from, and again where the connections were and stuff like that. For me now already, like having been at Eastern Washington, I've never been west, so a lot of my connections were southeast, or at least what I knew the players that I'd been recruiting and stuff like that, or had at least watched in recruiting were maybe southeast from being at OSU or being at Kentucky at Citadel in South Carolina and stuff like that. So this being probably an example of that, obviously. We're starting to again, it's who you know in terms of building those relationships of who you can trust and who you want to bring in. For us, kind of getting, I think, more representation in the team. We just signed a girl from Oklahoma, couple from Arizona and stuff, so that adds to those 7 states represented and stuff like that. But I think for us, it's trying to almost turn every stone to find something, or someone, should I say. We want to try and find the best players possible that are the most interested and committed into what we're doing. Um, and I think that that can go like really coast to coast. It can go anywhere. But I think again, it's finding the right fit on both sides. Maybe someone from the beach in Florida is not going to love playing in Spokane and Eastern Washington. Like maybe they are. Maybe that's exactly what they want. But it's really trying to find the right fit that works financially. I think number one for most people, but certainly academically, athletically as well. I don't know if that really answers you, but yeah.
Yeah, no. Okay, switching to non-conference, your conference is a big sky. Again, a lot of these schools, some people will have probably heard of in the call, some will not have. I think the number one thing that stands out to me when I just see your conference and when I look at your non-conference is how much you're traveling or how much that team's traveling to you. Just kind of touch on the travel aspect, in youth soccer, yeah, you're traveling here and there, but like I'd imagine a lot of these games you're hopping on flights.
We had one game that, and again, this is new to me. Again, having been in South Carolina, we have, or we had, I don't know how many it is. It must be like 50 or 60 Division One schools within a 7 or 8 hour drive. And obviously, same for you guys down there. There's a lot of schools that are within that kind of radius. For us, we drove to one game all season. So we drove to University of Montana, which was 3.5 hours. We flew to every other game. So I think that was maybe it was about split 10-8 or something like that, or 10-9 at home versus away. So we did travel a lot, and we do travel a lot in our conference. As you can see, no school is in the same state, except for Idaho and Idaho State. I think about it. Yeah, so we have to travel regardless. Idaho's close to us. We would drive to them if we were playing away to them. But other than that, it's a flight. So our conference schedule is intense in some ways with that. Again, non-conference is really good because we're not in class, so we don't start class until the same week we start conference. So our whole non-conference slate, we're not in class, so we don't have to worry about missing class. We don't have to. They don't have to balance that when they're in it in that non-conference game. So for us, in terms of the the adjustment period, especially for the freshmen, they don't have to go through a million changes at once. It's kind of step by step, which is really nice for us. But yeah, in terms of the travel, it is intense, especially in the West. Everything's so spread out, which again, I'm still learning. But yeah, even non-conference, we came out to play Troy in Alabama, and then we played Kennesaw State as our first weekend. And then, as you see, yeah, we played in South Dakota, we played at Southern Utah, we played San Diego. So like a range of certainly climates, but every part of the country almost. Next year or this coming fall, we go to Hawaii and stuff. So another one to look forward to. But yeah, we travel a lot, we fly a lot. We're lucky in some ways again with the class schedule, and then when we get to conference, it's not that bad. Our conference is technically still Friday, Sunday, which I know we'll get to as well. But for the most part, we were Thursday, Sunday this year, and that was, I think, split weekends. I don't think we were ever away Wednesday to Sunday. So in terms of the travel and the time that you spend away, it's still not that bad. It's still like if you're playing on a Thursday night, maybe it was we would travel Wednesday and be back on a Thursday night. So you're not missing a ton. But again, maybe if you go to Oregon, for example, you're playing against Rutgers, and that's quite a trip. So again, every school's different, but there's certainly, for the most part, a lot of travel.
Yep. Okay. Next one. What does a week like? What does a week look like schedule wise, academically and athletically? You kind of touched on your schools a little bit different. Do you want to kind of dive deeper into that and what you guys do versus kind of the traditional semester?
Yeah, so that's certainly in the recruiting process for us one of the biggest things that we need to talk about. I think it basically for us we've just got a really extended preseason. Um, Again, a semester school preseason, you're maybe 10 days. You'll come in around the 1st of August. For us this year, it was the 29th of July, or Division One was the 29th of July. So we were in then. And then again, for most schools, um, classes are starting maybe mid-August. So you've got that first 10 days, 2 weeks of preseason where some teams will train 2 days, strength and conditioning on certain days, and then you're into classes as well. So your classes in the morning or afternoon training, morning or afternoon, whatever you're not in classes. For us specifically, our preseason schedule. So again, from 29th of July, basically through the 27th of September, our schedule was pretty much Monday off, Tuesday Tuesday morning we would train. So we would train from like 9:30 till 10:15, just like something really light, but something within our unit. So the back four would train together, the front four would train together, the center mids would train together, something like that. And we would do a session of that. They would then go to strength and conditioning for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, depending on the day. That might just be like an activation or something like speed related, or it might be a lift. And then we would train in the afternoon as a team. So that would be, I know that's the next question too. We maybe train for an hour and 15, an hour and a half in the afternoon. So that was basically our Tuesday Wednesdays, and then we would play Thursday Sunday still, and even in that preseason block. So Thursday Sunday games. Tuesday our big training day. Wednesday our pre-game day, so a little bit lighter, a little bit more tactical for us. Thursday play, Friday recovery. So again, it would be a morning, maybe strength and conditioning. They would go in and do weights. Again, maybe it's a recovery, it's yoga, it's something like that. And then Friday afternoon, we would get a touch of the ball. Saturday, usually morning, we would train again and then play Sunday. So that was pretty much our schedule for the first almost 2 months. We're able to do more film. We can do again those morning time slots because we already built them into the schedule. We would just do maybe more film. So again, whether that's individual, whether that's group film, whether that's team film, or maybe it's just technical sessions or individual sessions. we've already got that time built into our schedule for that preseason block, so we can do, I think, a tiny bit more. Once classes start, though, pretty much this. I mean, we basically just take out that morning block, so everything gets pushed athletically to the afternoon, where you're working from basically 2:30 till 5, depending on the day again. So we would come in, they would go to what would they do? Yeah, they would go to strength and conditioning again, depending on the day. That's usually twice a week. Maybe again, it's just an activation. It's something light. It's stretching. It's jumps. It's something like that. It's not too strenuous. And then they would come and do film, and then we would go out to train. So that would be again like an hour and a half, depending on the day. The day before a game would be a little bit shorter, but that would be like our athletic or our soccer block would be in the afternoon. Um, Again, for quarter system, a little bit lighter load. So you're only taking maybe 2 or 3 classes a quarter, whereas a semester school, you're maybe taking 4 or 5, depending on which semester you're in. So for us, we would our players are a little bit lighter load, but more days of the week. So they're maybe in a quarter class 4 days a week, but only in 3. Whereas again, a semester, maybe you're only in 2 or 3 times a week, but you're in 4 or 5. So we have that balance a little bit too in terms of the time. They're not really in class that much. Obviously nowadays a lot of stuff's online as well. So really, depending on the player, maybe they're in class for an hour or two a day, and then they come and train in the afternoon. But they're in that 5 days a week basically. Um, Outside of that, again, obviously I mentioned study hall right at the start. Maybe they're getting study hall hours. Maybe they're coming over early for treatment. Maybe they have tutor, maybe they have group projects, maybe they have labs on certain days. So there's other things that certainly take up the time, but for the most part, we're quite consistent with how we break up our days.
Like it. And then you touched on the how long you train in regards to, other support teams or teams you have around the team. So, how many do you have on your coaching staff? You mentioned the strength and conditioning coach. You mentioned the athletic trainers. Do they have academic support? Do they have, what other sport support do they have around the team?
Yeah, so for us specifically, and I can speak on, I suppose, other schools too. Obviously, again, keep jumping to the next question. But for us, we have 3 full-time coaches, and then we have a volunteer goalkeeper coach who comes up maybe 3 or 4 times a week, depending again on the week if we're traveling, if we're not. He wouldn't travel with us, but he would be at basically every training session. So that was our soccer coaching staff. We then had a strength and conditioning coach who worked with us and football. So his time was a tiny bit split, but not really. Really, we were his main focus. We had, or we have, an athletic trainer who is split with us and men's tennis, so a fall sport and spring sport. So again, mainly with us. She travels to everything. She's at every training session, every game, available all the time. We have an academic advisor for the team specifically. Again, she's split between a few teams, but her main role is to work with our team. So again, she helps in registering for classes, setting up tutors, setting up extra study halls, setting up those kind of things, helping you communicate with professors if you're traveling and you're going to miss class, then she'll help you or help support you in that communication. In registering for classes and stuff, athletes get early registration, so we make sure that you can get into the classes that you need to, depending on the time of year and stuff like that. She can also help navigate, right, this professor's better than this one. This one's more willing to work with you if you are to miss class. This one is just better in general. So she's really helpful with that. We do have a nutritionist, like a grad assistant nutritionist that has started to work with like strength and conditioning and stuff. So within our fueling station, they're able to support in that, smoothies, with just balancing meals and stuff like that. Supporting you with certain snacks and stuff, and just knowing how to, like, all right, I've got class from this time till this time and I don't have any time before training, what should I be doing? She's there to help with that. And then we do have like sports psychologists, but they are like they're a bit more remote, so they're not on campus 24/7, or not 24/7, but through the week. The last one for us, again, a little bit tiny bit more unique. We've got full-time doctors that we're partnered with one of the local hospitals, so they are always available. Um, they're usually their office hours for the team are like Tuesday, Thursday or something. So if we ever need anything outside of what our trainers can provide, we have doctors basically on staff. So that's really, I think, quite unique, but really good for us as well. So I think that's, I'm probably forgetting someone, which is quite bad, but yeah.
No, but pretty big support team in regards to, every kind of facet of, being a college athlete's kind of covered with what you've got. So no, for sure. And then, I mean, the last one, which is obviously something really specific to you, you've been really lucky and, done really well to progress, through your coaching career thus far. You've had stops so far at the Citadel, which is a military school, Division One, based in South Carolina, the University of Kentucky, Oklahoma State, and now obviously Eastern Washington. What are some differences between all the programs you've worked at recruitment wise? Do you know, like, what I know we kind of touched on the last one, but what are some of the major differences between the four programs?
Uh, I think location obviously being the easiest difference. I've been at the beach. I've been at a mid-sized college town in Lexington in Kentucky. I've been in a small college town in Oklahoma. Now I'm in like a Pacific Northwest kind of city slash college town and stuff. So that's the biggest difference in terms of location, obviously. Um, but I think the easiest one is just resources in general. Or so again, obviously I mentioned the differences in terms of like support team and stuff. At Oklahoma State, for example, like some of those staff members that I was mentioning are split between certain sports. At OSU, that's maybe like the athletic trainer is only for soccer, so like they don't have to balance time at all. Maybe strength and conditioning coach is only soccer, so maybe they also have a director of ops. So your coaching staff are fully, they're just coaches. So like they're just recruiting. They've got more time to put into recruiting. They can maybe see a little bit more. They've got four full-time coaches, so like they can maybe get to more events. Maybe their recruiting budget's slightly higher, so they can get to more events across the country. Um, for us, obviously, our recruiting budget's a tiny bit different to what it might be in the Big 12. So we're a tiny bit more limited. We have to spend our money slightly differently to, again, like a school like that. But I think, yeah, I mean, facilities differ a little bit. Again, I've been at some Division One programs that the facilities are terrible, and then some that are like amazing, that like professional standards that can't really compare it to Scotland because it's certainly nothing like this, but it's like the best, certainly the best in the country. And then some that are just nowhere near it, and they're both still classed as Division One. So I think resources, facilities, those are probably the biggest differences at certain schools. Um, but ultimately, the best experiences I've had, which maybe are at the Citadel, was because I was surrounded by good people. And I think that's the most important thing in all of this, of course, is what fits the player, what fits the program in terms of what they're looking for. But are you going to be around good people that are there to support you get to where you want to be? And I think that again, I've been fortunate to work around some very different coaches, being able to bring in a lot of the good, and maybe leave out some of the not so good. But um, I think that's been the common denominator in terms of what success certainly looks like, but what gets the most out of people is just being around like-minded people that are willing to work and support each other through tough times, because you're certainly going to get that, but obviously hopefully through mainly good times as well.
Yeah. I guess last question, love that answer, but last question. Obviously, the forum are in different conferences. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
can I touch on that? Like what, each, you've got what remind me what it's a SoCon that Citadel's in. So you've
Yeah,
got the
yeah,
SoCon, you've got the SEC, you've got the Big 12,
yeah, yeah.
and obviously
Big Sky.
the Big Sky that you're in right now. Like what, obviously location and schools, but like, what's the differences between all the conferences?
Um, I think again, travel being an important one. Again, probably comparing Big Sky more to the SoCon certainly than to the SEC or the Big 12. But The travel, the climate maybe as well is an important one, especially for you all down there. It's a little bit warmer than maybe we are right now in Spokane. Well, not right now in Spokane because I'm in Scotland, but if I was in Spokane, there's snow on the ground, whereas I was never in South Carolina with snow on the ground. So depending on the conference, maybe it's colder as you get into certainly late October and stuff like that. So weather, but certain conferences have probably got more um, like style trends or like style of play associated with them. Again, depending on the schools that are in there and the coaches that are in there, obviously that plays a part. But I think that's another important thing to look at. Again, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Like for us, there's a couple schools in our conference that are really, really direct, and it's just miserable to play against. Like not really any teams that are really wanting to play. So it's a little bit more to suit that. We probably have to be a little bit more athletic and a little bit more direct in some ways to match that. Um, in I'm trying to think in the Big 12, for example, like TCU, one of probably the best well, up there with one of the best soccer playing teams in the country. They have players that can do that and are really technically sound. Texas Tech being a little bit similar to that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who else. Arizona State, maybe like another school that style wise they play in a certain way, so that you have to recruit against that as well as trying to fit what you want. So I think that's an important distinction. I think between again for us being a little bit more athletic and direct at times, but still trying to implement what we want in terms of the style that we're trying to get. Um, I think those are probably the biggest differences in terms of um, conferences. Again, maybe weather plays into that. If you're in the southeast, you can play nice stuff because it's nice and warm all year round, and like that's okay. But when it's freezing and it's snow and it's rain or whatever, then maybe you are going to be a bit more direct and make it difficult for teams. So
Yeah.
maybe more so in the northeast. But yeah, I think I don't know if that
Yeah,
answers your
no,
question.
just to kind of get an idea of all the different
Yeah,
conferences. So, well, just to kind of wrap it up, the last thing that I've got on our end is obviously something that some of you in the call, some of you watching back this call have been part of. But each summer, we kind of invite all of our kids that are currently playing in college soccer back for the months of June and July. We put on two training sessions a week with them, and we invite some of our current players that are within the club, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, even seniors in high school, and we get them playing with college level players again, kind of what Coach Hayden said, just to kind of bridge the gap, and then also kind of figure out, are you quote unquote a top end Division 1 player? Well, here's a top end Division 1 player that came through the club. And this is what she's doing. So this is just something kind of at the end of the presentation wanted to just throw in. Um, just to kind of close, and I'll stop recording.